Nicomachean Ethics is one of the cornerstones of Western philosophy, a text that has influenced the course of moral thinking for over 2 millennia. In this work, Aristotle seeks to answer some of the most fundamental questions of human existence. What is the best way to live? What does it mean to live well? And how can we achieve a life of true happiness and fulfillment? These questions, still deeply relevant in today's world, form the heart of Nicomachean Ethics, where Aristotle offers a vision of ethics not rooted in abstract rules or moral laws, but in the pursuit of human flourishing, or eudaimonia. At the core of Aristotle's philosophy is the idea that every action, every decision, and every life choice is aimed at achieving some good. But Aristotle distinguishes between different kinds of goods and argues that the highest and most important of these is eudaimonia, often translated as happiness, but more accurately understood as flourishing or well-being. Eudaimonia is not a fleeting emotion or a momentary pleasure, but the result of living a life that is rich in meaning, purpose, and virtue. For Aristotle, the ultimate goal of human life is to cultivate eudaimonia through the development of moral virtues, such as courage, generosity, and wisdom. What makes Nicomachean Ethics so profound is its practical nature. Aristotle doesn't merely theorize about abstract ideals. He examines the ways in which virtues manifest in everyday life, and how we, as individuals, can actively work toward a more fulfilling existence. Throughout the text, Aristotle explores the nature of virtue, the importance of friendship, the balance between pleasure and good living, and the role of practical wisdom in making ethical decisions. It's a work that speaks to the complexity of human nature, acknowledging our desires, our weaknesses, and our aspirations, while offering a clear framework for achieving a balanced and harmonious life. In this video, we will dive into some of the most engaging and thought-provoking chapters of Nicomachean Ethics. We'll examine Aristotle's groundbreaking insights into the concept of eudaimonia and how it shapes his entire ethical system. We will explore the idea of virtue as a means between extremes and how this concept of balance can help us live more morally responsible lives. The role of friendship, not just as a source of joy, but as a vital component of personal growth and virtue, will also be explored. Finally, we'll touch upon the relationship between pleasure and happiness, and why, for Aristotle, true fulfillment is found not in indulgence, but in the alignment of our desires with reason and virtue. Through these discussions, we'll see how Aristotle's ethics provide a timeless roadmap for anyone seeking to live a life of meaning, purpose, and true happiness. Chapter 1. The concept of the highest good. When we speak of the highest good, the very purpose that all our actions are directed toward, we must first understand what it truly means to live well. Every human endeavor, whether large or small, aims at some good. When we seek to fulfill our needs, when we pursue wealth, knowledge, or companionship, we are acting because we believe these things will bring us happiness. But happiness, true happiness, is not found in all things equally. It is not enough to merely chase pleasure or to accumulate wealth, for these alone do not lead us to the fulfillment of our nature. The highest good, the ultimate goal of life, is something far greater and more profound than mere pleasure or material success. It is a state of flourishing, a life lived in accordance with reason, a life that fulfills the deepest potential of human existence. What, then, is this highest good? It is eudaimonia, a word that might be translated as happiness, but which encompasses far more than the fleeting satisfaction that we often associate with that term. Eudaimonia is not a temporary emotion or momentary joy. It is the state of living in the fullest sense possible, of realizing our true nature as rational beings. It is a life of virtue, a life shaped by the exercise of reason, and one in which we engage in meaningful actions that are aligned with our highest purpose. To live a life of eudaimonia is to live in a way that is consistent with our most profound capacities, those faculties that make us distinct from other creatures, our rationality, our ability to reflect, and our potential for moral excellence. The argument I present is that all our actions, whether in our personal lives, our work, or our relationships, are ultimately aimed at some form of good. Yet, we often confuse the means for the ends. Pleasure, wealth, fame, and success. These are the things we often believe will bring us happiness. However, To confuse them with happiness itself is a fundamental error. Pleasure, for instance, while desirable in itself, is not the highest good. It is fleeting, transient, and dependent on external circumstances. A life that seeks only pleasure, without consideration for reason or virtue, is a life of indulgence, not flourishing. Similarly, wealth, power, or material success are not in themselves the ultimate goods. These may bring comfort or security, but they do not by their nature lead to the fulfillment of our deepest potential. The accumulation of wealth, though it may alleviate certain needs or desires, does not guarantee the well-being of the soul. Indeed, a life obsessed with material success may lead to emptiness, for it disregards the higher aspects of human life, those that require the exercise of reason, the pursuit of wisdom, and the cultivation of virtue. The confusion of these things with the true goal of life often arises because they provide immediate gratification or satisfaction. We may take pleasure in food, drink, or wealth, and these sensations may lead us to believe that they are the source of happiness. Yet this is a misunderstanding. The good life is not simply a life of satisfying base desires. It is a life in which those desires are governed by reason and are directed toward ends that are truly worthy of us. True happiness, true eudaimonia, lies in the pursuit of a life that is rational and virtuous, a life that seeks to cultivate wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance. These are the virtues that allow us to exercise our reason properly, directing our actions toward good ends. When we act with courage, for example, we are not simply acting to avoid fear or to gain some reward. Rather, we are engaging in an activity that reflects our deepest understanding of what is right, of what serves the good. Similarly, when we act justly, we are not merely conforming to laws or social norms but fulfilling our higher purpose as rational beings who understand the inherent dignity of others. In each of these actions, we find the expression of a life lived in accordance with reason. It is not enough to merely seek pleasure or success in isolation. The highest good is not achieved through the pursuit of any single isolated goal. Rather, it is realized in the harmony of all the parts of life. A life lived well is one in which pleasure, though not the goal, is enjoyed in moderation and in accordance with reason. It is a life in which material goods, though not the end in themselves, are used wisely as tools to facilitate virtuous actions. Happiness, then, is not found in any single pursuit, but in the unity of a life fully lived, one in which each action is guided by reason, aimed at the good, and in harmony with our highest capacities. In this way, the pursuit of eudaimonia is not merely an abstract philosophical idea, but a practical reality. It is the life that each of us is capable of living if we cultivate the virtues and align our desires with reason. True happiness is not a passive state that happens to us, but an active accomplishment, the result of living in accordance with our highest potential. It is a state that we must actively strive toward, day by day, through the choices we make and the habits we form. This is the essence of the good life, to live in a way that reflects our deepest understanding of what it means to be human, to be rational, and to be virtuous. And in this pursuit, we find that eudaimonia is not just the ultimate goal, but the very fulfillment of our nature. Chapter 2. Virtue and the Golden Mean. Consider for a moment the nature of virtue. What is it that makes a person virtuous, and how do we come to embody virtues such as courage, generosity, or wisdom? Virtue, as I see it, is not some innate trait we are born with, but rather a state of character that is shaped and refined through practice, habit, and the exercise of reason. True virtue lies in the balance between two extremes, the excess and the deficiency. It is not found in doing too much or too little, but in doing just the right amount, in responding to situations with the appropriate measure of action. Imagine, for example, the virtue of courage. Courage is not a simple matter of acting without fear, nor is it a matter of avoiding fear altogether. If a person acts without fear, they may be reckless, throwing caution to the wind and endangering themselves and others without a second thought. This would be the excess, the extreme of courage. On the other hand, if a person is entirely paralyzed by fear, they may fail to act when action is needed, even at the cost of their own well-being or the well-being of others. This is the deficiency of courage. The virtuous person, however, finds the golden mean between these two extremes. They experience fear as we all do, but they do not allow it to control their actions. Instead, they act in a measured, rational way, choosing to face danger when it is appropriate and doing so with the understanding of what is at stake. This is true courage, not an absence of fear, but the mastery of fear in the service of a higher purpose. Now consider the virtue of generosity. Generosity, too, lies between extremes. On the one hand, there is prodigality, the excessive giving of oneself or one's resources, often to the point of personal detriment. A prodigal person may give away everything they have, not out of true generosity, but out of a sense of obligation or to gain admiration. On the other hand, there is stinginess, the refusal to share or give when it is reasonable to do so, often driven by an excessive concern for one's own security or wealth. The generous person, however, does not give blindly or out of excess, but gives in a manner that is fitting to the situation, offering help or resources where they are needed, and in a way that reflects true concern for others. This is the golden mean of generosity, the ability to give freely but wisely, to act with consideration of the needs of others and the resources at one's disposal. These examples highlight the fundamental nature of virtue as a balance between extremes. Each virtue represents a mean between an excess and a deficiency, a mean that is not fixed or universal, but relative to the individual and the situation. The virtuous person knows when to act with courage and when to hold back, when to give freely and when to preserve resources, because they possess the practical wisdom to discern the right course of action. This practical wisdom, or phronesis, allows them to navigate the complexities of life with a sense of proportion and moderation. But virtue is not something we are born with. It is something we must cultivate over time. It is not innate in the sense that we are born with it as a fixed trait. Rather, it is a habit, a disposition of the soul that is developed through repeated actions and conscious choice. Just as an artist becomes skilled through repeated practice and an athlete strengthens their body through consistent training, so too do we cultivate virtue through the repeated exercise of the right actions. Each time we act with courage, generosity, or wisdom, we reinforce the habit of virtue, making it a more natural part of our character. The process of cultivating virtue requires effort and intentionality. It requires us to make choices that align with reason and to consciously strive for balance and moderation in all things. It is not enough to act virtuously once or twice. Virtue must be practiced consistently over time. The more we practice virtue, the more it becomes ingrained in our character, until it is no longer a matter of deliberate effort, but a natural expression of who we are. This is why virtue is often compared to a muscle. The more we exercise it, the stronger it becomes until it becomes second nature. Moreover, the cultivation of virtue requires a clear understanding of what is good and a commitment to aligning our actions with that understanding. Virtue is not simply about avoiding extremes, but about knowing what the right course of action is in any given situation. It requires us to use our reason to assess the context, to weigh the consequences of our actions, and to choose the path that is in harmony with our highest potential as rational beings. This is why the virtuous person is not merely someone who acts out of habit, but someone who constantly seeks to improve their understanding and application of virtue. In this way, virtue is a lifelong pursuit. It is not something we acquire once and for all, but something we must continually strive to cultivate day by day through our actions and choices. The road to virtue is not always easy, for it requires us to confront our own weaknesses and resist the temptations that pull us toward excess or deficiency. But it is a road worth traveling, for the reward of virtue is not only the achievement of moral excellence, but the fulfillment of our true potential as human beings. Through the practice of virtue, we come to live in accordance with reason, to live lives of balance, purpose, and true happiness. In this way, we find the meaning of life, not in the pursuit of fleeting pleasures or material success, but in the steady cultivation of virtue, the golden mean between extremes. Chapter 3. Intellectual Virtue and Practical Wisdom, phronesis. When we speak of virtue, it is essential to distinguish between two types: moral virtues and intellectual virtues. While moral virtues concern our character and the regulation of our desires and actions, intellectual virtues are those qualities of the mind that allow us to think well, understand the world around us, and make sound judgments. Moral virtues guide us in how we act, whereas intellectual virtues guide us in how we think and reason, enabling us to discern what is truly good and how to achieve it. While both are indispensable to the good life, it is the intellectual virtues that allow us to navigate the complexity of the world with clarity, prudence, and wisdom. Among these intellectual virtues, there is one that stands out above the rest in terms of its importance for living a well-ordered life: phronesis, or practical wisdom. Practical wisdom is not merely the ability to think abstractly or to possess theoretical knowledge. It is the virtue that enables us to apply reason to the concrete situations of daily life. While other intellectual virtues, such as understanding or knowledge, may equip us with facts or principles, it is phronesis that allows us to make the best possible decisions in the face of uncertainty, complexity, and conflicting desires. It is through phronesis that we can balance our rational understanding with the emotional and situational challenges that we face in our personal lives, our relationships, and our communities. To understand phronesis, it is important to recognize that it is a kind of practical judgment, a capacity to discern the right course of action in situations that are often not clear-cut. Life is filled with moments in which we are called upon to make decisions that require more than just following rules or principles. Sometimes we must weigh competing goods, consider the long-term consequences of our actions, or navigate the tension between our desires and our duties. In these moments, the intellectual virtue of phronesis allows us to act not only in accordance with reason, but in a way that takes into account the particularities of the situation. It is the virtue that empowers us to recognize when a strict application of a moral rule may not be appropriate, and when flexibility, prudence, or even compromise may be necessary. Phronesis is, in a sense, the art of living well in the world. It allows us to bring together our moral virtues, the courage to act, the generosity to give, and the temperance to moderate our desires, with the practical realities of life. This means that practical wisdom is not merely about choosing the right thing to do, but about choosing the right thing to do in the right way, at the right time, and in the right circumstances. It requires a deep understanding of human nature, a recognition of our limitations and vulnerabilities, and the ability to read a situation with nuance. For example, a courageous person may not always act with phronesis, especially if their courage leads them to act recklessly or at the wrong moment. Similarly, a generous person may not always be wise in their giving if their generosity is misplaced or causes harm in the long run. In both cases, it is phronesis that ensures that these virtues are exercised correctly. What sets practical wisdom apart from other intellectual virtues is its close relationship with experience and moral maturity. While we may learn facts and concepts through study, phronesis is cultivated through living, through engaging with the world in all its complexity, and learning from those experiences. This means that practical wisdom cannot be easily taught in a classroom or imparted through theory alone. It is developed over time, through the gradual accumulation of experiences and the reflection upon them. Just as a craftsman becomes skilled through years of practice and trial, so too does the wise person develop phronesis through careful, deliberate engagement with life's challenges. It is through practice, not mere knowledge, that we come to understand the intricacies of the human condition, to know what is truly worth pursuing, and to navigate the many paths life presents us with. However, phronesis is not just about making sound decisions. It is about integrating our rational understanding with our emotional desires. We are not merely logical beings, and our desires, passions, and feelings often influence our decisions. The person who acts solely on reason, without regard for their emotional life, may become cold, detached, or out of touch with the reality of human existence. Conversely, the person who is governed only by their desires may act impulsively, with little regard for the long-term consequences of their actions. It is phronesis that allows us to bring balance to these forces. It enables us to recognize when our emotions are in harmony with reason and when they may be distorting our judgment. Practical wisdom does not suppress emotions, but it tempers them, guiding us to act in ways that are consistent with our highest understanding of what is good. This capacity to balance reason with emotion is particularly important in our relationships with others. We often find ourselves in situations where our emotional attachments, such as love, anger, or jealousy, come into conflict with our rational understanding of what is right. In these moments, phronesis provides the discernment needed to act with both understanding and empathy, to temper our emotional reactions in ways that respect both our own dignity and the dignity of others. For example, in a moment of anger, the wise person may recognize the emotional impulse, but choose not to act on it, knowing that rash words or actions can harm relationships and create lasting regret. In contrast, a person without phronesis might give in to anger, acting without consideration for the consequences or the needs of those around them. In the end, the quality that enables us to live in accordance with our greatest potential as human beings is practical knowledge. It is a quality that manifests itself most fully in the choices we make on a daily basis, rather than in theoretical abstraction or speculative thought. We learn about the intricacies of human existence, the subtleties of our desires, and the needs of others through phronesis. By pointing us in the direction of decisions that advance our own and others' well-being, it enables us to live well. By putting practical wisdom into practice, we not only improve our decision-making skills, but also develop into more moral, balanced, and compassionate people who can face life's obstacles with poise and clarity. Chapter 4. The Role of Friendship in a Good Life. Friendship, my dear reader, is not only a source of joy and comfort, it is an indispensable element of the good life, the life of eudaimonia. To live well is not to live in isolation, for human beings are by nature social creatures. The flourishing life, the truly fulfilled life, is one in which we are deeply connected to others, sharing common goals, mutual respect, and a genuine desire for the well-being of each other. Friendship, in its most profound form, is a reflection of this interconnectedness and an essential component of our moral and intellectual development. It is, indeed, one of the greatest goods we can enjoy, for it enables us to grow, to learn, and to experience life more fully. To understand the role of friendship in the good life, we must first recognize that not all friendships are of the same kind. There are, in fact, 3 primary types of friendship, each rooted in different motivations and offering different rewards. The first type is the friendship based on utility, where the bond between friends is driven by mutual benefit. In such friendships, individuals are drawn together because they can offer each other something of practical value, whether it be help with work, access to resources, or the fulfillment of specific needs. While these friendships can be useful and even enjoyable, they are often short-lived and conditional. Once the benefit has been received or the need fulfilled, the friendship may fade. These friendships are not based on the true qualities of the individuals involved, but rather on external circumstances. The second type of friendship is based on pleasure, and here the connection between individuals is formed through the enjoyment of shared activities, interests, or experiences. These friendships often arise in youth or in contexts where people seek companionship for the sake of amusement or entertainment. They are often marked by lightheartedness and a sense of fun, but like friendships of utility, they can be fleeting. As the pleasure or the shared activity comes to an end, the bond may dissolve. While these friendships can provide valuable moments of happiness and connection, they do not contribute significantly to one's moral or intellectual development. The third type of friendship is the highest and most virtuous, the friendship based on virtue. This form of friendship is not grounded in utility or pleasure, but in the shared pursuit of the good. In a virtuous friendship, both individuals are committed to living lives of moral excellence and to encouraging one another in this pursuit. Such friends do not merely seek to benefit from each other or to enjoy each other's company. They seek to help one another grow in virtue, improve each other's character, and promote one another's flourishing. These friendships are deeply rooted in mutual respect and admiration for the good qualities each person embodies, and they are sustained by a shared commitment to living according to reason and virtue. The greatest opportunity for moral development and happiness can be found in this third kind of relationship. Virtuous friends are real participants in the quest for eudaimonia, not merely friends or associates. By holding each other to the greatest standards of behavior and not only providing support when needed, they help each other become better people. Virtuous friends encourage one another to act morally and sensibly, to overcome their shortcomings, and to develop their best traits by setting an example and offering advice. A good friend doesn't aid you out of duty or self-interest, nor does they flatter you for your own sake. Instead, they push you to be the finest version of yourself and to pursue moral greatness even in the face of adversity. Virtuous companionship helps us see ourselves more clearly, which is why it is so important to the good life. We can gain a better understanding of our virtues and vices, as well as our strengths and flaws, by looking at ourselves through the eyes of a true friend. A friend that is committed to our thriving will be candid with us, help us identify our weaknesses, and gently assist us become more self-aware. In this sense, friendship turns into a mirror that reflects back to us the true selves of our potential selves. We can truly advance in our moral development through such a friendship because a good buddy keeps us on the straight and narrow when we might otherwise veer off. Moreover, the bond of virtuous friendship is not fragile or contingent on external factors. It is not based on what we can gain from one another, nor is it dependent on fleeting pleasures. Instead, it is grounded in a shared love of the good, a commitment to the flourishing of each other's soul. Such friendships endure through life's changes and challenges, for they are sustained by a deep, enduring respect for the moral character of the other person. Even when circumstances change, or when the individuals involved face hardship or difficulty, the friendship remains steadfast, for it is rooted in a common pursuit of something far more meaningful than temporary pleasure or material gain. The role of friendship in the good life is not merely passive, it is an active force that shapes us, motivates us, and propels us toward higher forms of virtue. A virtuous friend does not simply support us, they challenge us to rise to our potential and to act in ways that reflect our highest ideals. In this sense, the best friendships are not those that merely affirm our desires or opinions, but those that help us grow, that push us toward becoming more just, more wise, and more courageous. True friends do not enable our faults, but instead offer the corrective influence of a loving and honest relationship. They encourage us to live in a way that reflects our better selves, and in doing so, help us to live lives that are rich in eudaimonia. In conclusion, friendship is not merely a pleasant accessory to life, it is a cornerstone of the good life itself. The best and most meaningful friendships are those based on virtue, where both individuals share in the pursuit of moral excellence and support one another's growth. Such friendships are not only a source of joy and companionship, but are essential to our development as virtuous individuals, guiding us toward a life of flourishing and fulfillment. Through virtuous friendship, we not only experience the deepest connection with others, but also reach the highest potential of our own character. Thus, friendship, in its truest form, is not just an addition to the good life, it is in many ways the very essence of it. Chapter 5. Justice as a Central Virtue. Justice is not merely a virtue among others, but a central pillar that supports the entire structure of the good life. It is the virtue that governs our relationships with others and ensures that we live in harmony with the principles of fairness, equity, and respect for the dignity of each person. Without justice, neither individuals nor society can truly flourish. Justice is the virtue that allows us to live in accordance with reason in our interactions with others, ensuring that we treat each person in a manner that reflects their worth and their rights. It is through justice that we find the means to balance our own interests with those of others, and to create a society in which individuals can live together harmoniously and productively. At its core, justice is about giving each person their due, treating others in a way that is appropriate to their actions, their needs, and their rights. Justice, however, is not a simple or uniform concept. It manifests in two distinct forms: General justice, which is concerned with the overall fairness of actions and laws, and particular justice, which addresses specific cases and the distribution of goods, responsibilities, and benefits. General justice, or fairness, is the broader conception of justice that governs all human interaction. It is the virtue of acting in accordance with the law, not merely because the law commands it, but because fairness demands it. It is a sense of moral equality that applies universally to all individuals. To be just in a general sense is to act in such a way that one's actions respect the rights of others, seek to preserve the common good, and align with the moral principles that underpin a just society. In a society governed by general justice, individuals treat each other with respect and fairness due to their humanity. Each person receives their due, neither more nor less, and the law serves as a tool for ensuring that fairness prevails in all interactions. However, the more specific aspects of justice, particularly distributive and corrective justice, are what allow us to apply the concept of justice in more complex and nuanced ways. Distributive justice, as the name suggests, is concerned with the distribution of goods and resources within society. It answers the question of how benefits and burdens should be allocated among individuals. In this sense, distributive justice is about fairness in the division of wealth, honor, and opportunities. The allocation of goods must be done according to merit, need, or some other just principle. But it should always seek to promote fairness and balance. For instance, those who contribute more to the community or society should receive more, but this distribution must also take into account the needs of others, ensuring that everyone has access to what is necessary for a flourishing life. Distributive justice does not only concern material goods, but extends to honor and recognition as well. A just society ensures that individuals are recognized and rewarded according to their virtue, effort, or contribution. Those who act in ways that benefit the community should receive the respect and rewards appropriate to their actions, while those who fail to contribute, or whose actions harm the common good, should face consequences in a manner consistent with their behavior. The application of distributive justice is one of the key roles of the political realm, where it is the state that is tasked with ensuring that goods are distributed fairly and that individuals are recognized and treated according to their desert. Corrective justice, on the other hand, addresses wrongs and injustices that have already occurred. It is concerned with rectifying imbalances or inequalities that arise from unjust actions or transactions. For example, if one person has wronged another by theft, assault, or fraud, corrective justice seeks to restore balance by ensuring that the wrongdoer makes amends. This could be in the form of compensation, restitution, or punishment, depending on the nature of the wrong. Corrective justice, unlike distributive justice, is not concerned with the overall allocation of goods in society, but with restoring fairness to specific situations where harm has been done. It corrects the imbalance caused by the violation of justice and ensures that individuals are held accountable for their actions. Now, how does justice relate to eudaimonia, or flourishing? The connection is deep and essential. A just life is one that aligns with the moral order of the universe. Living justly, acting with fairness, upholding the rights of others, and fulfilling one's duties is central to achieving personal fulfillment. No one can live a flourishing life if they live unjustly, for injustice not only harms others, but also degrades the person who acts unjustly. The unjust person is in a state of disorder, both morally and psychologically, for they live out of harmony with the principles of reason and virtue. In contrast, the just person experiences inner harmony and peace, for their actions are aligned with the moral fabric of the world. Justice, then, is essential to the development of virtue and the attainment of true happiness. Moreover, living justly contributes to the flourishing of society as a whole. A society that is grounded in justice is one in which individuals are treated fairly, where opportunities are distributed in accordance with merit and need, and where the common good is prioritized over individual gain. Such a society fosters cooperation, mutual respect, and the collective pursuit of well-being. It is in a just society that individuals can flourish most fully, for they are free from the fear of exploitation or harm, and they are able to live in peace and security. Justice, then, is not only a personal virtue but a social one, for it ensures that individuals can live in harmony with one another and pursue their own flourishing without hindrance or injustice. Finally, justice has a crucial role in the political realm. The state is not merely a mechanism for maintaining order, but a body whose primary purpose is to ensure that justice prevails in the distribution of goods and the correction of wrongs. The laws of the state should be a reflection of the principles of justice, and it is through the proper exercise of these laws that individuals can achieve justice in their relationships and actions. Distributive justice, in particular, is a task that falls squarely on the shoulders of the state. A just government ensures that resources, opportunities, and honors are distributed fairly according to the principles of merit and need, and it works to correct injustices that arise through crime, fraud, or exploitation. In conclusion, justice is not only a virtue, it is the cornerstone of a flourishing life. It is the principle that guides us to treat others with fairness and respect, to act in accordance with reason, and to ensure that the common good is upheld. Justice manifests in both general and particular forms, from the broad concept of fairness to the specific applications of distributive and corrective justice. Through justice, we achieve harmony both within ourselves and with the world around us, for it is the key to true fulfillment, both for the individual and for society as a whole. Without justice, there can be no flourishing, and without flourishing, there can be no true happiness. Chapter 6. The Ideal Life and the Role of Contemplation. When we consider what constitutes the highest and most fulfilling life, we must ask ourselves what activity can truly satisfy the deepest yearnings of the human soul. What is the pursuit that, when followed with dedication, can bring about the fullest realization of our potential as rational beings? Many might suggest that power, wealth, or pleasure are the keys to a life well lived. Some might argue that a life devoted to the welfare of others, to political life, or to action in the world is the highest calling. Yet, after careful reflection, it becomes clear that the life most worthy of our pursuit, the life that allows for the fullest expression of our faculties and the deepest connection to the truth, is the life of contemplation. Contemplation, the intellectual activity of seeking the truth for its own sake, stands apart from all other pursuits as the highest form of life. Unlike the life dedicated to pleasure or the life dedicated to power, contemplation requires no external goods. It is the most self-sufficient of all activities because it is driven entirely by the mind's natural inclination toward understanding. To contemplate is to engage the highest part of our soul, the part that is capable of grasping universal truths and principles. In the act of contemplation, we align ourselves with the highest good, and in so doing, we experience the greatest fulfillment that human life can offer. The contemplative life is independent of material prosperity, social standing, or outside events. Being a ruler or having a lot of money is not a prerequisite for contemplation. Anyone who is capable of devoting oneself to the quest of wisdom and knowledge can engage in this activity. The goal of the contemplative life is to develop an inner life of introspection, comprehension, and insight, rather than to pursue accolades or acclaim from others. Because it is self-sustaining and does not depend on the outside world, the pursuit of truth is the most self-sufficient activity. It provides a sense of fulfillment that is not based on material achievement or approval from others. Take a time to think about how contemplation differs from other types of living, including political life or the pursuit of pleasure. Despite its lofty qualities, political life is complicated, full of compromises, and frequently involves pursuing objectives that are beyond our complete control. While influencing and shaping the lives of people can result in many positive outcomes, working in politics frequently entails interacting with the darker aspects of our souls, such as our cravings for attention, status, or power. Even if political life might be a good pursuit, it lacks the fulfillment and independence that contemplation offers because it is reliant on the decisions and actions of others. The pursuit of pleasure, too, is a life that falls short of the ideal. Although it offers moments of happiness and satisfaction, pleasure is fleeting and its pursuit often leads us away from reason and intellectual activity. Sensory pleasures, whether they come through food, drink, or other indulgences, are ephemeral and ultimately do not satisfy the deeper, more enduring needs of the soul. In seeking pleasure, we do not elevate ourselves. Rather, we remain tethered to our physical desires, which are often in conflict with our higher rational faculties. Pleasure can be a part of a good life, but it is not the highest or most fulfilling pursuit. In contrast, contemplation engages the highest part of the soul, the intellect, which is the faculty that allows us to understand the world and our place within it. The philosopher, engaged in contemplation, seeks not to dominate the world or gratify personal desires, but to uncover the truths that lie beyond appearances. Through contemplation, we come to understand the nature of reality, the causes of things, and the order of the cosmos. This pursuit of knowledge, of understanding the very principles that govern existence, is the most noble of human activities. The life of contemplation is also the life that allows us to connect most directly with the divine. In contemplating the highest truths, we are aligning our minds with the divine intellect, for the ultimate truths are not contingent upon human experience, but are eternal and universal. In this sense, contemplation is the most spiritual of all activities. It is through contemplation that we approach the divine, for it is in the act of seeking and understanding the truth that we come closest to the nature of the divine mind. The life of contemplation is a life of alignment with the cosmos, with reason, and with the divine order that sustains all things. What makes contemplation such a fulfilling pursuit is that it is the fullest expression of human potential. As rational beings, we are capable of understanding the world, of grasping the principles that govern existence, and of contemplating the nature of the divine. These faculties distinguish us from other creatures, and in the act of contemplation, we realize our true nature. In contemplation, we do not merely engage with the world through our senses or desires, but through our intellect. We rise above the limitations of our physical existence and engage with the highest forms of knowledge. In this way, contemplation is the most complete expression of human flourishing. Moreover, the contemplative life is not just a solitary pursuit. It is a pursuit that allows us to engage with the highest part of others. In contemplating the truth, we come to see the world as it truly is, and we are able to recognize the good in others, in nature, and in the world around us. Contemplation allows us to appreciate the beauty and order of the cosmos, and in doing so, we are drawn closer to the divine. The contemplative person, then, is not one who withdraws from the world, but one who sees the world more clearly, who sees it as an expression of divine reason and harmony. In conclusion, the life of contemplation is the highest and most fulfilling form of life. It is the most self-sufficient of all pursuits because it does not depend on external goods or conditions. It allows us to engage with the highest part of ourselves, to seek the deepest truths, and to connect with the divine. While other forms of life, such as political life or the pursuit of pleasure, may offer temporary satisfaction, they cannot provide the lasting fulfillment that contemplation offers. It is through contemplation that we come to realize our highest potential, and in doing so, we experience the fullest form of human flourishing. Thus, the contemplative life is not just the ideal. It is the life that allows us to experience the greatest harmony, the most profound understanding, and the deepest connection to the divine. Conclusion. As we come to the close of our investigation of the fundamentals of the good life, it is worthwhile to take a moment to consider the important concepts that have come to light. As we've seen in previous discussions, eudaimonia, or the flourishing life, a life of fulfillment, virtue, and reason, is the highest good, the ultimate goal of human existence. In order to live this life, we must develop the qualities that direct our behavior and mold our personalities, constantly looking for the middle ground between two extremes. We now know that pursuing virtue and intellectual brilliance is the path to happiness rather than relying just on pleasure, fortune, or honor. The idea of virtue, which is at the heart of this conversation, is a useful manual for day-to-day living rather than just an ideal. Instead of being natural endowments, the virtues, courage, generosity, wisdom, justice, and others, are habits that we develop over time via conscious practice and decision-making. we can gradually develop our character and get closer to living a life of thriving by continuously making the right decisions, guided by reason. Instead of existing alone, the moral qualities cooperate and support one another to produce a well-rounded and decent life. Justice, we have seen, is the cornerstone of this flourishing. It is the virtue that governs our relationships with others, ensuring that we treat others fairly, respect their rights, and act in accordance with the common good. The role of friendship in the good life has been highlighted as well. True friendship, based on virtue, is one of the greatest goods we can experience, for it fosters our moral development, brings us closer to our ideal selves, and offers a profound sense of connection and support. In virtuous friendships, we find companions who challenge us to be better and who help us achieve our highest potential. Equally important, we have explored the idea that intellectual virtue, particularly the life of contemplation, represents the highest form of human activity. The contemplative life allows us to engage with the truths of the world, to understand the principles that govern existence, and to connect with the divine. In contemplation, we find the most self-sufficient and fulfilling activity, one that allows us to express our rational faculties to their fullest extent. It is through contemplation that we approach the highest good, for it is in the pursuit of wisdom and understanding that we align ourselves most closely with the divine order of the cosmos. These principles, though articulated long ago, remain profoundly relevant in our own time. In the world we live in today, where material success, pleasure, and power often dominate our pursuits, the wisdom of virtue offers a much-needed counterbalance. The emphasis on cultivating inner character, on striving toward moral excellence, and on seeking happiness through reason and self-reflection remains an essential guide for anyone seeking to live a meaningful life. In our modern age, where ethical dilemmas are complex and the pursuit of personal fulfillment can often feel elusive, the timeless teachings on virtue and happiness offer a solid foundation for making choices that lead to true flourishing. The concepts of virtue and justice, as well as the role of friendship, continue to shape contemporary ethical discussions. In a world marked by increasing individualism and social fragmentation, the idea that we are not merely isolated beings pursuing our own interests, but that our flourishing is bound up with the flourishing of others, has never been more urgent. Justice, in particular, serves as a compass for addressing the many social and political issues that challenge us today, from inequality to the question of human rights. Virtuous friendship, too, remains essential in a society that often values transient connections over deep, meaningful relationships. True friends who help us become better versions of ourselves remain invaluable in any time or place. The contemplative life, too, stands as a beacon in an era where distractions and surface-level engagements often pull us away from deeper reflection. In a world that prizes quick results and external success, the life of contemplation invites us to slow down, to focus on the pursuit of truth, and to connect with our higher selves. It encourages us to resist the allure of fleeting pleasures and to dedicate ourselves to a deeper understanding of the world and our place in it. In a time when many feel disconnected or overwhelmed, the act of contemplation offers a path to personal peace and intellectual fulfillment. As we close our reflections, it is evident that the ethical teachings we have examined are not merely historical relics, but living principles that continue to guide us in the search for a meaningful and flourishing life. The pursuit of virtue, the cultivation of just relationships, the importance of friendship, and the transformative power of contemplation are as relevant today as they were in ages past. These ideas remain timeless, serving as a guide for individuals who seek not only to live well in the external world, but to live well within themselves. By embracing these principles, we align ourselves with the deepest aspirations of our human nature, and in doing so, we discover the path to true happiness, the happiness that arises from living a life of virtue, wisdom, and self-reflection. Therefore, let us continue to strive toward the good life, the life of eudaimonia, by cultivating virtue in all its forms, by nurturing just and virtuous friendships, and by dedicating ourselves to the pursuit of wisdom. In doing so, we not only fulfill our potential as human beings, but contribute to the flourishing of the world around us. The teachings of virtue, justice, and contemplation offer us a path to lasting happiness, and it is by walking this path that we come to realize our highest purpose and attain a life that is truly worth living.